afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Mythgard in Middle-earth. My name is Corey Olson, the Tolkien Professor, and I am here, as always, with my friend Gryfflet, who is hanging out with the chickens here near the auction platform in Starkmore, well, in Avarden. He's standing here with the chickens because he's been hearing rumors there from his friends, the chickens, that the chicken path to Mount Doom is in fact open, which is extremely exciting news, which Gryfflet intends to tell to his other friends, especially to his very experienced chicken friend Wiggin, as soon as he can. So that's we still don't have a date yet, but now that we have had empirical confirmation that chickens can in fact get all the way to the cracks of doom, then we are almost ready to do our fried chicken run, which I'm pretty excited about. So hi everybody, good to see you guys again. Gryfflet is ready to prepare for the auction today, because the auction is awesome. So he has to go convince a bunch of other people to join the auction. So he's gonna go about and see if he can figure that out here. So the first guy is over here. Oh, the fruit market. Oh, lovely. What do we have in Dunland here these days? Apples? Yeah, apples. Okay, we've got some apples. And what else do we have? Bread? Carrots? What do we have over here? Huh? Oh, is that asparagus? Really? Wow. What are these? Leeks, maybe? And radishes? Oh, yeah. There's some excellent looking produce here. Oh, that's great. And is that a... oh, no, it's a ham. Okay, right. And sausages. Alright, that's good. Oh, wow, and it's quite a cleaver you've got working there. It's not doing very well, though. I need to sharpen that thing. Okay. Alright, Follunt. Who... I mean, I'm not going to judge Follunt, but why are you carrying a quiver full of arrows? I mean, never mind. It's okay. It's okay. I don't need to know. And wow. The, Ox sign. I mean, I assume he's Ox Clan, right? But, I mean, just looking at that Ox sigil on his skirts there, front and back. This is an ox with rather modest horns, right? But, an enormously pronged... kind of looks like the Punisher symbol, doesn't it? But, anyway. Alright. If all on, let's talk.
The Turknuth have been destroyed. I pray to the Urkwirad that we will not be next.
Okay, well, I'm kind of getting tired of Dunlandings telling me that, but anyway, alright, I'm preparing for an auction, yeah. Okay, you're in need of cattle, for you sold your last ones to the war effort. You did make a profit, okay, well that's good. The warg packs to the east devoured the few I had left, oh dear. You're willing to buy more, but not until I know how my investment is safe and secure. Not until you know it's safe and secure. Okay. Head into the hills. Oh, right. Kill the wargs. That's... Okay, right. Got it. So, I thought you meant safe and secure from Isengard. Like, how was I supposed to secure you from, like, the levies of Saruman's armies? But sure. Yeah, no, wargs, that I can do. That is within the power of Gryfflet. In fact, you'll see the keen dwarf cloak I have to commemorate my anti-warg skill. Whereas you here, you are a tanner, apparently. Right? We've got some nice, or sort of nice. Anyway, some pelts here. What was that one meant to be? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the shaggy fringe was there, but... Hey,
even the Ucluth have need of help on occasion.
Okay, you have a necklace, which you're almost ready to sell. Okay. Crafted of warg teeth. Well, maybe you should have been helping your neighbor. Dunlandings who wear them are powerful and demand respect from all around them, whether they retrieved the teeth themselves or not, right? So, okay, so if you just buy a warg's tooth necklace at an auction, you're deemed respectable and powerful? I guess. But you need one more tooth. Oh, right. Hormgrat. Hormgrot's tooth. It should be the centerpiece of the necklace. Okay. Alright. That sounds great. Okay, so I'm securing cattle and I'm helping assemble a necklace, and both things seem to be involved with killing wargs. So that's efficient anyway. But hey, what are you doing up here? Huh. You know, I gotta say, your face paint seems a little at odds with your, like, little blonde ponytail here. Maybe it's just me. Could just be me.
Many foul things dwell in the shadows. I fear wolves will be the least of our troubles.
Right, okay, herding, right? The clan tightly controls who can have cattle and how many. There are tags that are sold and attached to the animals. So any animal is found without a tag, it's brought to auction. And Bedware keeps the profits, really. Okay. You had a herd of cattle that strayed too far to the east. Many were devoured by the wargs. I'm fixing the warg problem already, but that's not the problem. I've sold the herdsman to the mines? Really? Oh, that's extreme. But you need to get started again. Well, if you hadn't sold off all of your employees to be mining slaves, you might be a little better off. Get the tags from your dead cattle. Okay. Presumably found near where living wargs are, right? So, okay. All right. And who's the last guy? This guy over here? Yanto? Who's he? Oh, no, this is the stable boy. Right. Almost forgot about the stable boy. Okay, so right, you're gonna go back and work for the stable guy. Great. Okay, so hang on now. I need a fourth merchant, don't I? Is this our fourth merchant? Eva, yes. Okay, I guess the ponytail look is in. Did Nona have a ponytail? Maybe she did.
Even the Uchluth have need of help on occasion.
Okay. Alright, you wish to trade cattle. Okay, does this have something to do with wargs? Alright. I'm venturing to the Great Rock. Yes, I'll find several smaller stones. So I'm going to collect a whole bunch of large rocks. I mean, smaller than standing stones, but if you bring me the stones, you will attend the auction. Okay, what are you're going to sell? You're not going to sell rocks. You're going to make an enclosure for what? Your cows or? Okay, no problem. All right, let's go talk to the stable master, see what else he has, and then we'll go head out for the thing. All right, let's see. Oh, that's right. I forgot there's no town map here. Let's see. All right, there is the auction thing. So there's the stables. All right, no problem. Okay, here we go. You can return your attention to the stable. Oh, good. Can I help you with anything
Do
further?
not speak the names of evil things.
Okay, we have a
Or you will
chance to
call
renew
them.
the stable's business. The next step is to obtain supplies for the horses. Okay. The boy will take care of getting everything straightened back up, but you don't dare send him into the fields to gather more supplies. Desperate need of hay. Yes, there are no horses to feed, but without food you cannot have any horses. Well, okay, but if there's no horses currently starving to death, you can call the need desperate, but, you know, whatever. I'm quibbling. The fields of the moors to the east of here have some hay stalks that were not gathered in the harvest. Okay, so harvest hay, collect stones, find cattle tags from dead cattle, kill a bunch of wargs and their leader. No problem. Where am I headed for these things? Okay. Right, got it. So we'll go uphill to look for... What? That's not still Dunhoth, is it? Can't be. No. Oh, dang it. Of all the... Look, I'm trying to look at ruins. You ridiculous bull. Why do we have to go through this every time? Arguably, I should pay better attention to where I'm going. But still. Okay. Let's get back on your horse, Gryfflet. As I was saying, that's not us, Dunhoth. That's the... I'm going to get assaulted by most of these cows, aren't I? What is that? So it's this I'm looking at? The... Flam Cadlus? Huh. I guess when I was collecting, you know, bandages and whatever up there, I didn't pay proper attention. It's a lot bigger. Maybe it was dark or something. I don't know. But it certainly looks bigger now than it did. Go check this out, Gryfflet. Okay. That's us, Dunhoth, over there, off in on the horizon. Yeah. Okay. All right. But see, look at this. I mean, this is one of the cool things about Dunland. Is you just, you know, on the top of any random hill, you'll see these huge Gondorian ruins. And this is clearly a Gondorian ruin as well. You can see by the wing motif. Of course, even just you can see the similarity in the architectural structure. Notice this sort of pyramidal thing here in the middle, and same thing there in the middle of Os Dunhoth, right? You got the little wing top towers there, and the little wing top towers there. You have the four pointy thing, tower top, which is classic old Numenorian construction. You see it all over the place in Numinous, and we don't see that here, but this is more ruinous than the other one. It's probably broken off, so that all seems fine. This seems clearly to have been a fortress rather than just a palace or a lookout tower, though. And if we look at this, it kind of makes a certain amount of sense, right? Galtrev is the town that has grown up here, but I say it makes sense because any road that's coming up from the south is going to have to come through here, right? So, because if we... Yeah, there we are. So, because the crossing of the Eisen, right? The fords of Eisen are down here. So if you're coming from Gondor, you'll be crossing the fords of Eisen here. So this tower right here, you know, this fortress right here is like smack in the middle overseeing this entire valley. You could see what a view it has, right, and how far away it can be seen and presumably see others. So you can see how it would have really commanded this entire valley, which is interesting, right, because it shows even more than some of the other sort of more lookout towers than we've seen before that the game is envisioning a much more sort of prominent military presence than frankly I would have guessed in Dunland. Dunland and Enidwaith both are right smack in the middle of kind of no man's land, right? I mean, it's not Arnor, it's not Gondor. Gondor never really extended past the fords of Eisen, really. I mean, that was the kind of the point of Isengard, is that it was you know, an outpost, like the northernmost outpost of Gondor. Calanarthon, which will later become Rohan, is really sort of, you know, the most far-flung, in that direction, you know, in sort of the northwesterly direction, most far-flung part of the Gondorian kingdom. That's why, that's why they gave it away, right? Because it's not like they gave away a part in the middle of the kingdom. They gave away the part up at the edge of the kingdom. And so the only thing really that Enidwaith and Dunland were used for was travel in between Arnor and Gondor back in the days when there was travel between Arnor and Gondor. So it's not surprising that they have the road. It's not surprising that we find, the old bridges, old stone bridges along the road. It's not surprising even that we still can see some Gondorian paving stones on that road. It's not surprising that we would find towers and keep sort of guarding the road, right? So like if you remember, let's go up for a second here. Yeah, up to Enidwaith, right? So this is the main road. You can see the arch here and the arch down here. So this is the main thoroughfare, the road which of course will eventually become the Greenway, the road that leads all the way up straight to Farnost. So towers like this one, Amon Min, right, which we saw before, now overrun, of course, as so many of them are. It makes sense, right? You would want a sort of outposts along the way. There were other places like this one, whose name I always forget. Right, Harndurian, which is more of a lookout post. I mean, remember, that's the sort of very tall, towering peak right up on top of the very high hill there in the middle of the plains, so it has a really great view of this entire stretch of road, right? So this is more of a lookout post. This is more of a, defend, or this up here rather, is more of a, defending the road. You want somewhere where people can take refuge, or from which, in case someone is attacking travelers on the road, you want to secure the travelers, right? So that all makes sense. So you can see how this sort of fits in. Osdunhoth, I don't know the history of Osdunhoth. I don't know why. Osdunhoth is rather a more large and elaborate fortress than you'd think, right? But down in Dunland, so this is where the main road comes through, right? So I'm not 100% sure. I've never been quite 100% sure exactly where the main road. I mean, as you can see, the roads get all kind of mazy through here, right? If the main road, which will become the Greenway, comes down through here, we know where it goes to, which is here, and then leads straight through Enidwaith. And we know it crosses the Fords of Isen down here. But so what is it? This one, right? That goes like up this way and then out this way to Galtrev and around? Maybe. We'll see, right? We'll be looking into that. But it's interesting that even if that is so, we have this fortress right up here that we're just looking at right here, which is clearly meant to design this to protect this part of road. But again, it's a fair. This is not just like a little tower. This is a pretty big place. Oop, and night has fallen while I was looking at the map. Oops. Oh well. Now we can see Osdunhoth silhouetted against the stars, which is very fetching. But in the meantime, Gryfflet is going to go fetch some hay, because that's what he's here for. Not, needless to say, to be looking at ruins, because, that's not what he's here for. Okay. Why don't you fetch some hay here, Gryfflet? And in the meanwhile, I will answer some lore questions, because last time we got like a whole bunch of lore questions, and so I still have some stored up from last time. Fairvenin has been conveying them to me, so let me just review here. Okay, all right. Finlay was asking, can we be sure that Glorfindel from the First Age is the same person as Glorfindel from the Third Age, who was sent back to Middle-earth after fighting the Balrog, or did Tolkien just reuse the name for some reason, and they are two different elves? Great question. Yes, we can be sure, and the reason that we can be sure about this is that Tolkien actually wrote about this. You can read about Glorfindel and the sort of return of Glorfindel to Middle-earth in, I believe it's the Peoples of Middle-earth, the final volume of the History of Middle-earth, of the History of Middle-earth series, which we will probably get to in our Mythgard Academy discussions in a year or two, probably. We're about to do the War of the Ring, starting probably the end of January, maybe beginning of February, something like that. Anyhow, Tolkien actually talked about this because, see, if you want to hear the way it came around, Finlay, we can kind of explain that step by step and how this came to be a problem, because it's weird. Weird certainly in the sense of being unprecedented, right? Because there are no other elves that we know of that did that. Let's see, do you count? No, just for Slayer deeds and stuff. All right. Stealth up to it. Ah, right. It's going to be these dudes. Yes. Okay. So elves don't reuse names, right? So, if you're an elf and you have a kid, the last thing you do is name him after, your dad or your grandfather or somebody like that. Which, of course, makes perfect sense when you think about it, because humans do that for relatives who either are gone or will someday go, right? It's a kind of memorial. It's a kind of, honoring, even if they're still alive at the time when you name your kid. There's still, the idea is like, your name and, your name literally, as well as like your heritage and your lineage will like continue through my child, right? That's kind of the whole idea of the Hound's Rest. That's an interesting name. Anyhow, so it's that seems to be sort of the philosophy behind it. But of course, elves don't do that, right? Elves are immortal. They don't die. And even when they do get killed, even when their bodies perish, they just go to... Come on, would you please? You're not even going to count for anything, Mr. Common Woodstalker. What are you doing here among the wargs? Besides vexing Gryfflet. Anyhow. So right, again, why would an immortal elf commemorate their parents from whom they haven't been separated, right? Their parents are not, like the parent is not going to die of old age. Even if the parent is killed, by some misadventure or battle or whatever, there's still not going to be. You're not. Oh, yeah, you're not the named one, right? So that's fine. You're still not going to be separated from them, because elves, when they are killed, when their spirits leave their bodies, they go off to Valinor, into the halls of Bandos, from which they return, right? Never to Middle-earth, or only in the one case ever to Middle-earth. But they can come out, they go back into circulation, right? So even if your parents or your children die or something, it's not the same for an elf as it is for humans, because they know they're going to see them again. They might be like sad when somebody dies, but they know it's just gonna, we'll be apart for a time, maybe a few thousand years, maybe 10,000 years, something like that. It might sound like a big deal, right? But again, not when your whole life expectancy is several 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years or something like that. When that's your point of view, you kind of, one supposes you really can't help but look at it differently. Anyway. So elves don't name people after each other. They don't build memorials, that kind of thing. Which is where Glorfindel becomes a problem. So why did Tolkien name the elf who rides out of Rivendell and meets Frodo and accompanies him to the fords of Bruin? And why did he name that dude Glorfindel? And the answer is he was recycling Glorfindel, right? When at the beginning of writing the Fellowship of the Ring, Tolkien there was not an explicit connection between the Silmarillion material and the Lord of the Rings material. It wasn't really part of the same world. He'd written a lot of the Silmarillion material, but it wasn't really part of the same world. He hadn't fully integrated those two things. So what he did, as he did, in many times and places in The Hobbit, he was recycling. He takes a name or a concept. He takes a name or a character concept, like the Elven King of Mirkwood, right, who is very much conceptually like Thingol of Doriath, conceptually in the sense of being like the Elven King who lives in the caves underground by the river in the middle of the forest, and all that stuff. Let's see. Did I get everything? I still have 2 more wargs to defeat, including the pack leader. I wonder where he is. I know I'm right on top of him, but alright. I think I have to go up there. Anyway, so as I said, Tolkien recycled a lot of these concepts. And Glorfindel was originally a recycling. Glorfindel was, of course, from Gondolin, and he wrote The Fall of Gondolin a long time ago. The Fall of Gondolin was one of his very first ever stories. For a second I thought that was a cow up there, but no, it's Hormgrot. That's what I thought. All right. I wish you could pick his pocket, Gryfflet, because that would be pretty boss. But I don't think he's got pockets to pick. No, ineffective. Oh well. Anyhow, so Tolkien loved the Gondolin stuff, and Glorfindel was a favorite character of his from the Gondolin story. So he, when writing the Fellowship of the Ring, decided that he was gonna recycle Glorfindel. But that was right at the turning point. Like, Glorfindel's character comes in right at the time when he's making his decision to integrate the two, to say, hey, no, I'm not just going to recycle Silmarillion materials. I'm going to make the Silmarillion stories the ancient history of this world in which the Lord of the Rings story takes place. And when he makes that decision, things change, and he stops recycling, and then instead of just being recycled characters, they become the actual characters. So that happens to Glorfindel. Glorfindel comes right at the turning point. I mean, like just a few pages after Tolkien had kind of made that decision. So, like while he was in the midst, really, of making that decision. So I'm very convinced that when he first names Glorfindel, he's just recycling the name. So he's just reusing it. But then, of course, he decides to stop recycling. So it's not recycling. So everything, the Silmarillion stuff is in the history of the world of the Middle Earth of the Lord of the Rings. So now he's so now Glorfindel is identical with Glorfindel of Gondolin, and he's left with a puzzle. There's only 2 possible ways that this could be. There's only 2 possible ways that Glorfindel of Rivendell could exist. Either he has to be the original Glorfindel returned, or he has to be a later elf who's renamed after Glorfindel, and that doesn't happen either. So the one is unprecedented, and the other, we're told, is just like impossible. It doesn't happen. So in the end, he kind of labored with this, but in the end he decided, all right, I'm going to make him have returned. And he had an explanation for, he devised an explanation for this. He's in the household of Rivendell for a reason, right? Because he, Glorfindel, gave his life in order to protect Tuor and Idril and 7-year-old Eärendil as they were fleeing from Gondolin. Glorfindel was sort of especially attached to the house of Tuor and Idril because they were his friends that he helped to escape. And so even after their disappearance and departure, he decided that his duty was unfinished. That he still had a calling to go and look after the descendants of Tuor and Idril. And so where do we find him? In The Lord of the Rings, we find him in the house of their grandson, Elrond, right? So that all kind of makes sense. Anyway, so that I think is I think it's a fine resolution, but that's kind of the way in which that sort of came around. And again, he wrote about this sort of decision explicitly there in the Peoples of Middle-earth, so that's how we can know for sure that was the way that he finally resolved that issue. Okay, now to find ourselves some horses. Okay.
Do not speak the names of evil things, for you will call them.
Okay, the lightning frightened the horses and they bolted. Oh dear. So now I have to gather the horses. Okay. Alright. Okay, that's fine. But I've got some other things I've got to return here first. Here's that tooth you wanted for the necklace,
The
Cadman.
Ukwirod requires us to give welcome to Devodion.
Great, so you're going to come to the auction. I'm so glad. Okay, and no, not you. Yes, you. All right, Mr. Produce Man, Mr. Greengrocer, I killed your wargs. That's right. I assume you were victorious. You don't have to assume. Okay, and then you up here, Ava. Have your rocks, which I've been somehow
The
carrying.
Ukwirod requires us to give welcome to the Duvodiad.
There you go, no problem. And then I've got to go up here and give the cattle tags that I took off the cattle corpses.
Evil things stir in the night.
Okay, I hope you don't mean that personally. All right. Is it time for the auction yet? Well, wait. I should go finish the... All right, Bedware. But hang on, Bedware. I'm gonna go this way first because I gotta collect horses. Let me just take care of that. So, oh man, these are some far-flung horses. Okay. So you're welcome, Finlay. No problem. Let me go to one of our other questions. While I collect horses, I'll answer another question. Okay. Let's see. I'll do Marielle's question next. Marielle asks, is there any clue what less hopeful choice the Dunedain could have made that would have let Arvedui change his fate? Yeah, they could have made him King of Gondor, is what they could have done. Let's review, right? So, and let's also see if I can not draw the aggro of any bulls on the way to find a wandering horse. So, the North and the South Kingdom had been separate for quite some time. And this is right after Earnur does his thing. And by his thing, I mean heading down to Minas Morgul and getting himself, well, vanished. Right? We don't know what happened to him. Gryfflet has already discovered what in the Lotro world they speculate happened to him, which I think is awesome. I absolutely love the thing with Earnur in the volume 1 of the epic. Oh man, look, sorry, I broke the ankle of your horse. So I've got good news and bad news on the horse gathering thing. Okay. Oh, it vanished. It just flat disappeared underneath me. I don't know if that's normal, if that's the sort of thing you expect your horses to do. If it is, it's no wonder you keep losing them. But anyway, okay. So Earnur has just disappeared and he has no heir. So the kingship of sorry, this is not Earnur. This is the hang on, I'll come back in again. Earnil and Earnur are the last two kings of Gondor. It's before Earnil becomes king, Eärnur's father. So it's not when Eärnur vanishes. The previous king is killed in battle, and he doesn't have sons, but there's still, like, you know, members of the royal family, you know, sort of extended family hanging about. When this happens, Arvedui, the king in the north, right, he's the king of Arthedain, ruling at Fornost. And there we are. Another horse over here. Arvedui is ruling at Fornost. And he says, hey, I've got a great idea. So I hear you guys down there in Gondor are having a little king issue, right? The king got lost. I mean, like, he died. You didn't, like, just lose him. Later on, they'll just lose one. But here, he's been killed. So Arvedui says, you should just let me be king. That would solve your problem right there, right? Let's reunite the kingdoms, he says. And the people of Gondor are not keen on this, because although, of course, they still acknowledge their kinship with the kingdom of Arnor, you know, the kingdom of Gondor has grown and become proud over the years, since the splitting up of the two kingdoms. So they don't, I mean, they seem to kind of view the Arnorians, you know, as like their sort of country cousins, you know? And so the idea of being like, hey, yeah, let's go out and like import one of the, you know, like the king of Arnor and just say, hey, yeah, we'll totally let you be king here in Gondor, and that would solve all of our problems. They don't want this. They would rather, you know, dig a little deeper into the king's extended family and promote one of their own. And Eärnil, of course, as it turns out, is he's one of their great generals as well. So, like, he's got a big following. People really like him. He's not exactly like the heir. Again, you know, when the king was alive, it's not like he was like, Eärnil, you are my heir, and if I die, you shall be king after me. There was no clear succession. But they'd rather take him and kind of jump him up and make him king, even though he's not exactly of the royal line, than go with Arvedui, right? That path seemed to the men of Gondor less hopeful than just promoting Eärnil was. So the prediction, right? So there was this sort of prophecy that if they take the way which seems less hopeful, then Arvedui will change his fate. The change of fate meaning that he would become king of a wider realm, right? So that he would become king not only of Arnor but of Gondor, and he would reunite the kingdoms. But if it didn't happen, then it's not going to happen, you know, for a long, long time. And of course it didn't. They said no, and he's like, okay, fine. And then Fornost falls, and then he goes up into the north and hangs out with the Losoth and drowns in the ship, right? Which story with which most Locho players are familiar. But yeah, so that prophecy refers to the choice of the Dunedain. They had the option. That was a moment at which the kingdoms could have been reunited. And if they had been reunited, you know, as Aslan says in the Chronicles of Narnia, we're never really told what would have happened, right? But we get a hint of what would have happened. A hint that things would have turned out quite differently had they actually done that. But they didn't. So, there it is. All right. An elaborate dagger sheath? Oh, it's a pocket item. Okay, well, I can't use that, so... now you can renew the stable's business. Fantastic. Okay. And, Mariel, Old Numenor law let women inherit. Yes, it did. Because I left that bit out, Marielle. Thank you for reminding me of that. One of the other reasons that Arvedui made a claim in Gondor is not just like randomly like, hey guys, it's been a couple thousand years. I'm king up here. Can I be king down there too? Like, it wasn't quite so out of nowhere as that. He was married to the daughter of the king. You know, so like he married into the royal family of Gondor. And so he was basically pressing the claim of his wife, being like, hey, we're like, here we are. Yeah, the kingly lines of the north and of the south have been joined in marriage, and wow, look, by providentially, now y'all don't have a king, so it kind of seemed like, let us take this as a sign that it's time to marry the two kingdoms again, right? And he was pressing her claim like she should inherit, and he was arguing that, according to Numenorian law, like in Numenor of old, the kingship passed to the eldest surviving child, male or female. So, like, why should they in Gondor be like, oh, we don't have an heir? He's like, you do have an heir right here. Like, I'm married to her. But they in Gondor were saying, like, yeah, okay, that was true in Numenor, but it's not true anymore. And they're like, and we have not heard that that this custom has been held up in the north either. Like, you're just making this argument because you want your wife to be king, to be queen. You guys don't hand down things to your daughters either up there. So, like, what are you talking about? You're just making this argument, for your own gain, essentially, and they dismissed it. But anyway, yeah. So, but yes, there were ruling queens in Numenor, though it wasn't like that at the beginning. And there are a couple interesting stories connected with that. But hang on, let me talk to Bedward.
You are welcome here, as long as you do not trouble us.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be a great auction. Padded mantle of the soothsayer, huh? Hang on, let's see. I don't know. That is a relatively attractive. Let's take that. Okay, Bedward.
It is not our custom to trust Devodia.
Okay. Oh, it's time for the auction.
Perhaps you may be of help to me.
Woohoo! Okay. Hang on. Okay, we'll do the auction. Then we'll come back to women inheriting the throne in Numenor. I am so ready to begin the auction.
All is ready for the auction. It is an event not unlike a warrior's arena, for my clan is accustomed to waging war with words and coin.
Waging war with words and coin, huh? Okay, so Bedward, this here, right, there's my friend Andras and his awesome son Mabon, and there's the 4 merchants you sent me to. So this turnout of 5, this you think is going to be the most profitable auction you've had in a long time? It's kind of sad. Makes me wonder why you have so many benches, but that's okay. All right. Yeah, let's begin. Several lots up for auction. You open the bidding on the first lot, a cart full of goods from the northern lands. The Falcon clan bid 6. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We have a celebrity guest at the auction. Oh no. He's taking his time. I trust I am not too late to join. A cart of valuables from the north. Isengard bids 5. Falcon clan bids 8. Can you beat that, wizard? Isengard bids 5. Hey, Bedwars, this is how it's supposed to go. The Falcon clan bids 10. I love how he continues to try to outbid him. Isengard bids 5. Sold to Isengard for 5. Oh, man. Yeah, don't stand for this. You have poisoned our clan for too long, wizard. You are destroying the Ukluth. You've done nothing but prosper as a clan. If you disagree, perhaps we could continue this conversation elsewhere. Be my guest at Isengard, and I will show you all that I have done for your people. Just looking. Ooh, look at his cloak. The boy stays. Watch after your boy. Oh dear. Oh, I love the rainbow cloak. It's actually shimmering and changing. Oh, excuse me, Saruman, there. I was kind of stuck right in your midriff there. Just admiring your cloak of many colors. It's much better than like a stripy cloak, right? Which is obviously not what Gandalf described. It looks white from a distance, but then as you get closer, you see it change and shimmer. That is sweet. Sorry, I'm kind of like the paparazzi here with Saruman. Saruman, can we have a statement? All right. Sorry. Okay. So were you guys saying something over here? Did I miss something? Okay. Now back to business. Oh wait, no. Bedwars says I will watch over the boy. I thought Andros was telling me to watch over the boy. He's gonna trust him to you? I don't know, man. You do not seem like a trustworthy guardian. The sale did not bring in enough to clear your father's debt. As such, it is now your debt. Yeah, see, now you're going to hold him responsible for the debt after you didn't... Oh, man. Yeah, this is awful, Bedwar. You're a jerk. And obviously under the thumb of Saruman. Even though he came himself, which is fairly impressive. It is commendable that you wish to aid the boy, but I must finish the other lots before we can discuss an arrangement. Oh, man. I'm going to help Mabon. Forget about this. Whether through the war camps or the mines, I will get what is owed to me. Wow. Man, you're an even bigger jerk than I thought you were.
The Ukweirad requires us to give welcome to Devodiad.
Always a pleasure to do business with Saruman of many colors, and a mistake to challenge the wizard. Sad. Sad, sad. Thin Brass Trackers Band, huh? Fine.
Hear me out, Devodiad, for I have a tale to tell.
Saruman cheated. So you use the word cheated to describe it, huh? All right. So you're not necessarily a super cheerful collaborator. Okay, you cannot go against the wizard. Once he names his price, the purchase is finished, whether it is fair or not. At the end of the day, I will always get paid. The goods he purchased are traveling by caravan south to Wolf's Cleft. You don't know whether they plan to stay there or head further to Isengard, but you know they will not make it. I will intercept them. They are evil men and do not deserve any quarter. Okay, all right. Maybe you're better than I thought. I thought you were going to take the price out of the boy's hide, but if you want me to ambush Saruman's people and take back what they've rightfully stolen, then okay, we'll do that. Okay, so now you're going to squeeze the boy's debt out of me. Well, that is unscrupulous, but understandable. Let's see if I can go catch up with that caravan and talk about Queens of Numenor. So yeah, so originally the Numenorians were also only the males inherited, and this is important because one of the early kings of Numenor had a daughter who was his eldest child, and she did not inherit. the kingship. The kingship passed to her younger brother. However, she then married the Lord of Andunia and was the mother of the line of the people of Andunia. Am I going the right direction? Yes, I am. The mother of the people of Andunia, who, which is the family that Amandil and Elendil and Isildur and Anarion came from. So Elendil is not the heir. He was not the king of Numenor, right? When it fell. So this is kind of the way that this is managed, right? That Elendil should not be the heir of should not be the king of Numenor, and yet he is legitimate. He's not just. He doesn't become king in Middle Earth just because he is, the like ranking surviving Numenorian or something like that. He becomes the king because he is rightfully of the royal line, even though again he's not of the. Oh. Okay. Oh, you could all see me from there, huh? I kind of hoped that I was far enough away that I could come out of stealth and do that, but if not, that's also fine. I'll take care of things. Alright. Anyway, so Elendil is only of the line of Andunia, but of course they're affiliated, they're sort of connected to the royal house. And so if that rule about seriously? I'm going to target on the guy way down the road, not the guy who's actually wailing on me. If the rule about daughters inheriting had been put into effect right away, at the beginning of Numenor, then Elendil and Amandil would have been kings, respectively, in Numenor. So that's interesting fact number one. Interesting fact number two is the reason why the law was made about women inheriting at all, and that comes from Aldarion, King Aldarion, who only had a daughter, and so he made the law in her favor. But even that was, you can read the story in Unfinished Tales, the story of Aldarion and Arendis. And as you read in the story of Aldarion and Arendis, the ultimate sort of cause of this wasn't just that he only had one child. He and his wife had one child, and then they became estranged. They didn't get divorced, because the Numenorians did not apparently do that. But they were estranged. They separated and never got back together again. And so basically it was in order to, so she didn't die and he didn't divorce her or anything, so he couldn't have any more kids, and unless he reconciled with his wife, which he refused to do, and she refused also. So he passed that law so that his one living child could inherit the throne. So anyway, so those are the two Numenorian stories. So that's where it's okay for girls to inherit, and there were ruling queens after that. Well, there's a corpse over here. I see on my little treasure map. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So it is kind of interesting that the usage passed away from that idea in post-Numenorian times, right? Like in Gondor and Arnor both, they ceased to observe the eldest child of whatsoever gender will inherit rule, which seems to be, I take that as sort of evidence of the conformity of Gondorian and Arnorian customs to sort of local patterns, right? Local precedents, rather than maintaining their older traditions, which deviated from the way that others did it. Yeah.
Greetings. Will you remain here long?
Well, let's see. Hang on, I'm looking at these boots. Ah. Yeah, those boots might be worth having. Oh, no, I don't like the cap at all. No. No, but those boots... Those boots are a cosmetic upgrade. Okay, bedwear, so... Does this...
It is not our custom to trust devotees.
One more thing. One more
But
thing, then you'll
perhaps
consider
you may
Maybum's
be
get
of help
paid.
to me?
If you fail me now, I will sell the boy off to the mines. Okay, so you are a jerk after all. Fine. To the south of Starkmoor is Wolf's Cleft. The armies of Dunland have been gathering and training there. You sell them weapons, armor, and slaves. Okay, yeah, boy, right? You're just an upstanding customer. Lately, the sales have been slowing. What, the sales of slaves? That's terrible. I'm going to fix that for you. Oh, I am. Okay. There's a cliff to the south that overlooks Wolf's Cleft. Once there, I want you to do as much injury as possible. The more weapons and armor you destroy, the more I can sell the warriors tomorrow. Well, okay. I guess destroying the armament of the... Oh. You don't want me just to go. You want me to... You want me to zoom there. Fine. Okay.
Of all the Ox clan, I'm the most canny, for I know best how to create my own opportunities. A broken sword here, a shattered shield there, and a crippled arm to wield them. Men, arms and armor do not come cheaply.
Okay. Oh, hey, Dunlanding Archer. Pontine had a question here. What was Pontine's question? Oh, yeah, there it is. Why were the people of Numenor not allowed to sail further west? Yes, that was called the ban. The ban of Numenor. Because they didn't want them coming to Valinor. Now, why didn't they want them coming to Valinor? That, of course, becomes the controversial point later on. So, after the First Age, the Valar decide that they're going to reward the Edain, right? They're going to reward the faithful houses of men who fought with the elves and remained faithful all the way through all the horrible things that happened, near the end of the First Age. So, okay, fine. They're gonna they're gonna reward them. They decide they're gonna reward them by giving them this like paradise to live in, right? So we're gonna construct this human paradise, which would be this big old island out in the middle of the ocean. So we're gonna separate them. We're gonna separate them from the rest of Middle Earth, so they'll be safe. There'll be no wars. There'll be nobody to fight with them. They're going to be safe from any, sort of surviving creatures of the enemy. They'll have everything that they want because the island is going to be awesome, and so crops will grow wonderfully there, and there will be great store of metal and jewels and riches and everything that they could want, and so the people of Numenor will be allowed to grow great and strong and peaceful and wise and all of these other things, right? So that was the plan of the Valar. But they're like, hang on, we can't give them too much of a good thing, right? So, because you might ask the question, like, why didn't they just bring them to Valinor, right? I mean, if they wanted to do the whole paradise thing, why didn't they do that? And the answer is they're like, okay, well, these are the Undying Lands. This isn't really designed for humans, and because they had this sense, which seems to have been true. That's it. All right, just come here and muck things up a bit, and ooh, wow, that is a pretty serious camp. Wow. So you've built these towers all around it. Oh, man. Who are those guys? It's like a troop of guys walking through. I guess they're Dunlandings. For a minute they looked like the monks who beat themselves in the head in the Holy Grail, but I guess they're Dunlandings. Huh. Okay. Yeah, Maven, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. Of course, you see the parallel, right, between the reward that the Valar give to the Dunedain and the gift that they gave to the Eldar in the first place, inviting them to come to Valinor, right? But the difference is they know that the fate of men is different. The ultimate destiny of humans does not lie in this world. Valinor is called the Undying Lands for a reason, not because it confers, undeath, right? Not because it confers immortality upon those that live there, but because it's like the permanent home of those who are bound to Arda for all of creation. So that's the Valar and the Eldar, the elves. For humans to live there would be inappropriate because they're not, right? So they were trying. The Valar were trying to sort of compromise, right? Let's give them this sort of temporal paradise. It's still part of the mortal lands, right? But it's separated from the mortal lands. It's a place apart, and it's great, and it's wonderful, but it's still part of the mortal lands because it's their destiny to die, so they only live here for a time. So to prevent them from coming to Valinor, right? They wanted to say, because they knew, like, if they just visited Valinor, that sooner or later they would be like, hey, we totally want to just stay here and live here. And that would not be cool. So they're like, look, don't even visit, right? Don't even come. You're forbidden even to come. And so that was the ban of the Valar. They were forbidden to sail any further west from the island of Numenor than they could see. Like, they couldn't go out of sight of Numenor. As long as they could still see Numenor from, like, the top of the mast of their ships, they were still okay. But if they passed beyond that, they had broken the ban. So this banner didn't used to be here. And this corpse didn't used to be here. Now, I didn't have any use for this guy. But I guess Saruman found out that he was being double-crossed. I wonder if I hope Maven's okay. The auctioneer's treachery of Isengard finally caught up with him. Uh-oh, no sign of the merchant's son. Where'd he go? I gotta take care of Mabon. Okay.
Greetings. Will you remain here long?
You have your suspicions about where he went?
As long as the sun shines, you are welcome here.
Okay, I might need some help here from those of you who know this area well. Mabon is not the first child to disappear from these lands. For the past several months, nearly one vanishes per week from Avardin. Mostly orphans, they disappear in the night, not but a few tracks heading to the southwest are ever seen. Those who have caught a glimpse tell of a horrible creature, an abomination of nature, striding across the plains with a bag over his shoulder filled with lost children. If you wish to find this boy, you must venture to the swamps, head southwest along the roads until you find Dunbog. They may know more of this abomination there. Okay. So I've done Dunland before, once. I don't remember ever coming to the end of this quest chain. Did I miss it? So, like, I'm supposed to talk to someone in the Dunbog. So I've just gotten a vector quest, right, to the Dunbog. Which is fine. But then when I went down there, I was waiting to, like, find somebody to tell about the abomination and see if I could find Mabon or at least discover what had happened to him, and nothing? Right? I mean, do we ever get a resolution of the story? It involves a raid area near there? Really? Well, that would explain why I never found it, as I was soloing all the way through there. But, okay. Alright. Well, as long as you guys tell me that there is, because I think in my own play before, oh, I'm sorry, I'm missing the road to the Dunbog. In my own play before, I had not succeeded, and I had missed the end of that chain. The quest chain didn't obviously lead to it, as this just leads to talk to somebody, like this dude.
I have not seen your kind before.
And then that merely leads to starting to do the quests down here in the Dunbog, and therefore, like, I just totally lost the Mabon thread. Okay, so I'll pick them up at level 75. So those are the ones, the level 75 quests that you pick up in Galtrev. You mean like those post-Isengard quests? Right, the ones that you're supposed to do after you've been to Isengard, right? I mean, story-wise, they come after Isengard. Oh, no, I don't like those boots as much. Alright. Mabon will be standing next to a dude in Galtrev, but how did he get there? So there's a place down here called the Culling Pit? Alright. I'll keep my eyes open, I guess.
Hear me out, Duvodiad, for I have a tale to tell.
What could I possibly want this way? A giant with a bag of kids. That's what I'm looking for. You don't need anything from me. I'm looking for a giant with a bag of kids, last seen headed this way. That's it. Sack of orphans. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. But that's fine. Okay. You're not certain that Bethon was wise to send me here, huh? But you have not. You can hide. The land is open as far as I can see, and there is not anything to see. Why would you even want to come here? Well, you guys are kind of down on your home. Hey, this is where you live, right? You not live here by choice? Perhaps I would prove a valuable ally to the Avant Luth. Okay, so you guys are like the Alligator Clan? That's cool. It's kind of better than the Ox Clan, really. Okay, gather food supplies.
The Terkluth have been destroyed.
This sounds like fun.
I pray to the Ukhwirad that we will not be next.
Hey, Gryfflet is caught up with his level. Since I am so persistent, perhaps I can put you to some use. Okay. The elders have asked us to gather supplies. You'd rather be in your hut with your wife keeping warm. I can understand. Alright. You need to collect shells, beetle shells. Okay. You use those shells for armor and cooking. Beetle shell armor? Awesome! Just like the errantry dude. That's great. And their meat is passable. If you say so, man. Okay, you want undamaged beetle shells. Right? Okay. What do you want over there?
Many foul
I'm
things
happy to
dwell
run some
in the
errands for you.
shadows.
I'm going to get
But your
takeout
wolves
anyway, so...
will be the least of our troubles.
Okay, another Devodiad trying to please us. Who was the first one? What other Devodiad have been coming? Rangers? Have the Rangers been coming through here? You're tired of our kind coming into the bog, thinking you can change the world with your mere presence. Well, it won't happen, but you can make my life easier. If I can make it easier, you'll let me. That's very big of you. Bog reeds. You string your bows with reeds? Wow. I guess they are strong reeds. Wow. Okay, no, never mind. I didn't mean to question you. I'll gather reeds. Because I'm sure they're really strong and make excellent bowstrings.
Hear me out, Devodiad, for I have a tale to tell.
Yep, no worries. So I'm doing things. Okay. The elders always give you the worst tasks. Okay, so you're going to pass it on to me, huh? Toad legs. You want me to collect toad legs. Disgusting creatures and make even worse food. Okay. Hunt toads and take their legs. Got it. Alright, toad legs, beetle shells, bog reeds. Alright, let's see what we can do here. A bunch of bog reeds. You know, JJ, I was hoping that I was gonna get to face the Hummerhorns and the Dumbledores. Maybe if I make some beetle armor, then they'll let me fight the Dumbledores. You think? Hey, it's a bog toad. Oh, sorry. I've targeted the bog toad across the way over there. I'm like, why can't I attack him? Yeah, for those of you who don't recognize it, in Tolkien's poem Errantry, the protagonist of Errantry does battle with the Hummerhorns and Dumbledores. A Dumbledore, of course, is a bumblebee. Which word, of course, has become rather more famous for other reasons since Tolkien wrote that poem. Yeah, JJ, I also hope that Hummerhorns would be a really high-level mob. I think that's right. Wouldn't an Errantry instance be awesome? Though I hope they wouldn't make us recapitulate this sort of frankly awkward romantic relationship with the butterfly, because it's a little uncomfortable. Especially since he, learned Sigildry in order to make her marry him. But, anyway. Yeah? Oh, I didn't know that, JJ. JJ says, in the Lord of the Rings living card game, Hummerhorns are one of the most dreadful enemies in the base set. That's cool. That is pretty awesome. I approve of any Tolkien game or adaptation that makes wanton errantry references. Cool. Okay, more. I've got some beetle shells. I'm collecting more bog beetles. Oh, there's a lot of treasure-bearing corpses around here, too. Alright. Yeah. The Hummerhorns are large stinging insects of some kind. Yep. Well, I say large. Large to the Errantry dude. But the Errantry dude isn't large. I mean, it's pretty clear he's not large, in that he primarily interacts with insects. I think he's, what's the word? Oh yeah, diminutive. That's the word, for what the Errantry dude is. All right. Ooh, I gotta go soon. Hey there, bog toad. Oh, they are ugly. Is it a horned toad? It's kind of cool looking, actually. I mean, ugly, yeah, but interesting. Boy, when in the Dunbog, you know, when a toad is a horned toad, they don't mess around. Yes, yes, JJ, they're elfin, even. Exactly, Phil. That's exactly right. They are elfin. Yeah, this is a thing that people often kind of forget, or rather, it's another example of what I find a frankly charming habit among Tolkien readers. You know, Tolkien, you know, often kind of talked about the things that he believed in or the things that he was trying to do or not do, and he is, so, you know, many of his fans and readers have really taken his words to heart. Often in some sort of fairly extreme ways. By which that is to say, like, for instance, and I talk about this many times. I was just talking about this the other night. The use of allegory. A lot of people will, you know, remember that Tolkien said that he doesn't like allegory and he doesn't use that, you know, and that the Lord of the Rings isn't an allegory. And so, whenever I, for instance, you know, make reference to the concept that, you know, Tolkien may be using allegorical concepts in something, there's always somebody who's like, but Tolkien said he didn't like allegory. No, he doesn't like allegory, and he doesn't use it very much or very often. But that doesn't mean that there's, you know, that he never uses allegory, because he does sometimes. There's some, I mean, he will describe it, you know, that he very self-consciously uses allegory. He uses allegory. Leaf by Niggle is an allegory. He tried to use allegory in Smith of Wootton Major, though I don't think he does it very well, because again, it's just not what he meant to do. So anyway, it's another example of this kind of taking Tolkien at his word, you know, a lot, and kind of really taking to heart what he says, is what he says about elves not being diminutive. Well, I almost deliberately went over to that cloud of swamp gas because I thought it was a UFO. I mean, I thought it was a set of bog reeds. Anyway, so, you know, Tolkien on fairy stories does a big thing, right? Makes a pretty big deal about the fact that elves are not little diminutive pixies, right? They're not little fairies. They're not little winged fairies. You know, his speaking against Tinkerbellism is very, you know, is very prominent. It's a very prominent theme in on fairy stories. And so a lot of Tolkien readers kind of cling to that, you know, and they're like, okay, so to elves, or elves to Tolkien are not, I don't know what Tolkien is to the elves. Elves to Tolkien are not, you know, small diminutive fairies. And again, it's very important, and obviously kind of understanding what fairies meant to Tolkien and you know, the whole concept as he describes it is clearly important. But when you read his early work, it is equally clear that his earliest work, when he talked about fairies and elves and elfin things, that he was exactly talking about diminutive fairies. So this is not to say don't believe Tolkien when he you know, what he talks about. It's just a question of putting his words into context, right? His his words about elves not being diminutive, those are the words of something like an adult convert, essentially, right? He changed the way that he approached elves. But the sort of the fairy tales that he grew up with, the way in which he always thought about elves. He knew, of course, about the older stories, the medieval stories, in which the elves are depicted quite differently, and very rarely as small, diminutive figures, right? Really never. He knew about those, of course, but still he was immersed in and participated in the sort of 19th century culture of, the elves as the little people who do little mischievous things. And that's how he describes it. So errantry is one of the classic examples. The errantry protagonist is an elf, and he's a wee diminutive elf who goes around making ships out of flower petals, ship sails out of flower petals, and getting into duels with dragonflies and bumblebees, and not to mention the hammerhorns, and marrying butterflies, right? I mean, this is who he is, right? This is his world. But then Tolkien's idea changes, and when it changes, he kind of distances himself really forcefully from that world that he himself participated in his early writings. Anyway, yeah, cool. Ethelod. Yes, he did originally plan to have the elves get smaller over time. And there are a couple places where you can still see the references to that surviving in the Silmarillion. Even in the Lord of the Rings, remember when Galadriel says, "I shall diminish and go into the west," right? Now, Galadriel clearly means I will give up being a queen and being thought a very big deal as I am around here, right? And I will go into the west and remain Galadriel, meaning I will remain myself and not lose my soul, but also meaning I'm just going to be Galadriel, right? I'm gonna humble myself and go into the west. But that talk of elves diminishing as the age of men comes was literal back in the old days. And by the old days, I mean the teens and 20s, when he was originally writing the Book of Lost Tales and stuff. They literally were getting smaller. The other thing that you can remember, you may remember the passage in the Silmarillion where the Silmarillion narrator tells us, for elves in those days were of like stature with men, right? And it's a little bit in the context, if you just come to that, you know the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit really well, and you come to that passage that says, well, elves were of like stature with me, they were of a similar height with men. Your reaction might be, as I know mine was, when I was young and first began reading the Silmarillion, my reaction was always, well, duh, of course, what do you mean? Why are you even clarifying that? It doesn't need clarification. Everybody knows that elves are of like stature with men. That Legolas is about the same height, as Aragorn and Boromir, in the ballpark anyway. Who thinks differently, and what is the other option? And the other option, of course, is that they're only a few inches tall. And again, the elves in those days were of like stature with men. Since then, they have diminished, right? So yeah, absolutely. Over time, the elves are said to be shrinking, but again, that's from back in those older days of Tolkien's career, when he was still participating in the culture of little wee pixie elves, and he was still writing poems kind of in that world. But not only writing poems in that world, the Book of Lost Tales, the whole point of the Book of Lost Tales was in large part to explain how did things come to this, right? So even back in those days, he wasn't just content to say, that's what an elf is, right? Elves are nothing more than the diminutive little people. He was sort of taking that as a starting point. But what he was doing in the Book of Lost Tales was, I want to tell the great legends of how the world came to be in its current situation. It's an explanatory myth in that way. So how did we come to be this world dominated by human beings that still tells stories about the elves, and still sometimes there are like reported sightings of elves, and there are still sometimes little odd happenings that may or may not be best explained by saying that a mischievous elf has done that, right? So why do we live in a totally human-dominated world and yet a world which still retains memories of elves? How did this situation come to be, right? And the Book of Lost Tales, those stories which will eventually become the stories of the first age of Middle-earth, that's the explanation, right? Because there used to be the kingdoms of elves in their wars, but then they lost and faded, and a bunch of them went off into the west, and the rest of them diminished. So there are only a few elves left in the world. The wandering companies, or the lonely companies. Only a few elves left in the world. There's especially a lot of them in England, which is why there's a very rich fairy tale tradition in England. But still, they've gotten smaller, and they've mostly left, and very rarely do they appear to anybody. So that's the story about elves actually diminish. That's where the stories about elves actually diminishing came from, because again, that's the starting point. The starting point is 19th century fairy lore, right? And rather than just saying 19th century fairy lore is bunk, which is essentially what later Tolkien went on to say, right? That he finds on fairy stories, that's essentially his argument, that 19th century fairy lore totally misses the point about fairies and about fairy stories. But that's not where he started. Where he started was accepting it as the starting point, or rather as the end point, and then telling the stories from there. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah, so the high elves are even taller than men. Arabini is suggesting some, yes. And it is true that Phil is correct that Thingol was the tallest of all of the children of Iluvatar, even taller than Elendil, who was 7 feet tall. So yeah, Thingol is northward of 7 feet tall. Somewhere probably between 7 and 8 feet tall. So yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the elves were all on average taller than men. For instance, it's mentioned, it comes up when Beleg and Gwyndor are lugging the unconscious body of Turin out of the camp of the orcs when they've rescued him. It comes up then that Turin is bigger than they are. So like the two of them can lift him and carry him out. Of course, this is the fateful night, which is going to end very badly, but meanwhile, they're carrying his unconscious body out of the camp, and he's bigger than either of the two of them. Now, Turin is a stud, right? So he's a very manly man, is Turin. And Turin, of course, is not only very, very strong and studly, he is also the hottest of all of the human males that ever lived. Turin is the sexiest. Turambar was the sexiest man alive in the first age of Middle-earth. But anyway, so he's big, he's manly, he's huge, and the elves are smaller, right? Beleg and Gwyndor are both of smaller stature than he is. So it's not just that like they started off bigger than men and got smaller. Thingol was bigger, but he's an exception, right? He did, in fact, like the apocryphal Took, he did take a fairy wife. Indeed, better, he took a fey wife, right? Anyway, Phil, Tuor was also fairly attractive. I mean, they were an attractive family. But Turin, remember, takes his looks from his mom, who was the most attractive woman, human woman of the first age. Morwen Elethwin. She was very remarkable for her beauty. So it's actually because he took after his mom, not his dad's family. So it's not like Hurin was a troll or something. And so Hurin and Galdor, the fair-haired family of Hador Goldenhead from up there, they're all sort of attractive enough. But the extreme sexiness of Turin Turambar comes from his mother's side, actually. Anyway, yet he still ended up with his sister. she also was very attractive, right? I mean, he had good taste. He didn't know she was his sister, right? She was very attractive. Well, Dior is called the Beautiful, yeah, but I mean Dior, right? I mean, he's the son of Luthien, for crying out loud, who is the most beautiful of all the children of Iluvatar ever. So, you know, kind of, he would have really had to have lost the genetic lottery for Dior to turn out a frump. So, yeah, no, Dior was very attractive, and Beren was no slouch. He wasn't, he was never singled out for his physical attractiveness, though it is worth noting that Morwen and Turin are connected to his family, right? I mean, they're kinsmen of Beren's, so clearly there are plenty of attractiveness genes in Beren's gene pool as well. So anyway, that Dior is attractive is no surprise to anybody. But yeah, and Dior is counted among the elves, Marielle, exactly. So he's not he's no rival. But again, remember one of the many names of Turin Turambar, the name that he did get a name which was just about how hot he was, right? He gets a bunch of different names which sort of commemorate different elements of his career, right? Some of them less not less noteworthy, but less admirable than others. But he does get one of his name, which basically means, wow, he's really hot, right? Like the super hot guy. Rough translation there. And that's Adonathelm. And what it literally means is Elfman, right? Like, this guy is so hot, you could totally mistake him for an elf, right? If you didn't know better, right? That's kind of gives you a sense, right? So that when we say that Luthien, so it's not like Luthien and Morwen are really on a par, right? Even though one is the most beautiful of all the elf women and the other most beautiful of all the human women, the elves were really kind of all of them a step upward, right? But Angelic Peach is wondering if there's Ethelon asks, what of the attractiveness of the petty dwarves? Well, I'll say this. Mime was the most attractive of all of the petty dwarves left. That's because there weren't any others. But no, they're not a handsome race. They are unlovely, you may remember. But anyway, Angelic Peach, are there any elves that are portrayed as less than attractive? See, it's tricky, Angelic Peach, because as a whole, they're the fair people. They're the beautiful folks, right? So, are there any elves that are just ugly? Sador, after Turin smashes his face in with a cup? No, but any unmaimed elves that are described as being unlovely? I can't think of anybody. I mean, Phil, you're right that Eol was unpopular. I mean, he couldn't get a date for the prom until he, kind of tricked one into his house and trapped her there by magic. But see, here's the thing to remember, Angelic Peach, is Tolkien very rarely does physical descriptions, right? He'll give some general characteristics, but he doesn't spend a lot of time on people's physical characteristics. If something is noteworthy, we'll be told about it, right? Like the fact that Hurin is not tall is emphasized, right? Because if you didn't say that Hurin was on the shorter side, you'd be picturing somebody as really tall, because all the great heroes of old were really tall. He's not, so we're told that. Beren had dark hair. We're told that, right? But we don't know anything else about him, right? What was his face like? Did Beren wear a beard? Probably, because he lived out in the wilderness all the time. But was he attractive? What did he look like? We don't know. We don't really know much of anything about that, right? What did Tuor look like? What did Beor look like? We don't know, right? again, we're told general things like the House of Hador tended to be blondes, right? Whereas the people of Beor tended to be dark-haired and dark-eyed. But we have very little in the way of physical description. With the elves, we have even less. The only things that we know about the elves are those that are distinguished as superlatives, right? We know that Luthien was gorgeous because we're told she was the most beautiful of all the children of Iluvatar. We know that Thingol was super tall because we're told that he is the tallest of all the children of Iluvatar. But we don't know much else. What color hair does Mablung have? I don't know, right? Was Mablung ugly? Right? Did he have a broad, squat, ugly nose? That's exactly the kind of detail that we're never told. So, since Tolkien never sort of gives that sort of stamp of individualism on any of his characters, especially in the Silmarillion, by just like giving us a brief description of their physical characteristics or something like that, we never get the kinds of details from which we can judge that. The only time he would mention the ugliness of a creature is if they are superlatively ugly, right? I mean, if their ugliness is important for some reason. We don't know. Right, so we don't really know because none of them are singled out. I'm trying to think of anyone who is singled out for being unattractive or unlovely, and I can't think of anything. Yeah. Oh, who's telling you that elves' ears were shaped like maple leaves? They're having you on. Yeah. Dorlin is right about the leaf-shaped ears. There is one very small reference to it. Yeah. Anyway, okay. I gotta go. I gotta go pick up my kids from school. So, Gryfflet will turn in his quests next time. I guess he'll have to carry this bag of stinking toad's legs until next week, but that's all right. He will be back next week, duly to deliver his beetle carapaces, toad's legs, and what else? Oh, bog reeds. That's right. To the Avant Luth, and see if he can penetrate deeper into the mysteries of the Dunbog, and perhaps someday or other find poor Maybog again. I've already forgotten his name. The kid. Anyway, track down those sacks of orphans to their ultimate destination. Thanks everybody for joining me, and I will see you guys next week. I think Druid's Fire is coming up next, so stick around and hang out with Druid's Fire some, and I will see you guys as soon as I can. Bye now, everybody. Thanks for joining in on my rambles around Standing Stone's brilliant digital adaptation of Tolkien's world. If you enjoy these adventures, please consider supporting this and other entertaining educational programming by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.